The PlayStation 4 has had a pretty good year so far in 2016 with exclusives such as Uncharted 4 and Ratchet & Clank being some of the best games of the year. Now that we have a pretty good idea of what's coming later in the year, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the PS4's fall lineup of games. Let's get right into this. Now obviously we've got to put focus on the exclusives, not only games but this year the experiences too. One of the critical components to the PS4's success this fall will be the reception to PlayStation VR. Yes, Sony is finally getting into the VR game, and this is something that has gamers divided. On one hand, this is a completely new experience for console gamers, and the fact that VR will be running on a $350 machine will be very impressive. At the same time, VR is an unproven platform. The unit itself costs $400, plus you'll need the camera, so it's easy to tell why some might stray away from it and stick to the regular PlayStation experience. PlayStation VR will be released on October 13th. A big factor will be what kind of games and exclusives does VR have that really sell the gamers on the platform. So let's take a look at some of the games coming to PSVR. First up, probably the one with the biggest name, Gran Turismo Sport. It's the latest game in one of the most successful video game series of all time. Gran Turismo coupled with VR obviously is very exciting, however this is not a game that is exclusive to VR. If you want to play the game using the traditional setup, you can do that. So it's interesting, I don't think people are going to be buying VR just to play Gran Turismo Sport, especially because the franchise has such an established fan base and they're used to playing the games the regular way. However, as an added experience for VR, it will be pretty cool. A lot of people love Gran Turismo, especially in Europe, but adding VR to it may actually attract more fans and more of a casual audience. GT Sport comes to the market on November 15th. Riggs Mechanized Combat League is a multiplayer VR shooter being developed by Guerrilla Cambridge, the same guys that made the excellent Killzone Mercenary on PS Vita. As far as VR exclusive games goes, this is one of the most promising. It's a fast-paced arena shooter where you control different rigs, which are mechs, each of them control and play differently. Maybe multiplayer shooters and VR isn't exactly a match made in heaven, but it'll be interesting to see how it turns out, and it should give us an idea of how multiplayer games and VR will work. And then you've got some smaller games, 100-Foot Robot Golf, Batman Arkham VR, and yes, it is Batman Arkham, but it won't be a traditional open-world adventure game. Eve Valkyrie should be good if it runs well. There's PlayStation VR Worlds, which will probably act as a showcase game, much like what Wii Sports did for the Wii. Res Infinite is one of the games that I'm very excited for, and when you think about games that could have VR implemented into them very well, Res is one of those games. And then VR will also be implemented into a few other games. Final Fantasy 15 will have a VR experience, as will Star Wars Battlefront. This seems to be more tacked on, and it really won't be a deal maker, but hey, it's there. We do know that there will be 50 games released for VR by the end of the year, some obviously on a much smaller scale than others. Going over the PlayStation VR games, while there's definitely a large quantity of games, for a lot of people nothing jumps out as this must-play exclusive, and that's really because not a lot of developers can invest into what is still an unproven platform. What if a developer sinks millions of dollars into developing a AAA big-budget VR exclusive, and then VR doesn't really catch on? A lot of developers have to wait and see how VR develops, and if gamers are gonna buy into it. If you're buying VR this year, you're probably just buying it for the allure of the VR experience and not for any specific game. Sure, you might find some great games on the way that work with VR really well, but there aren't a lot of big exclusives for PSVR, and for a lot of gamers, I see them waiting until a price drop or for more games to be released. However, to the casual audience that sees PSVR at a kiosk at their local store and tries it out and is blown away, I think it'll be a gigantic success. Maybe for a lot of us hardcore gamers, there's not a lot that really stands out, but put yourself in Sony's shoes. VR is a very enticing gimmick to the casuals, and it could find massive success in the same way the Wii found gigantic initial success. Its longevity to gamers will depend on more games being released, and it does look like Sony is going to be committed to the platform, but who knows? We've seen Sony give up on platforms before, so that's still up in the air. Okay, so outside of VR, what kind of big exclusives do we have to play this fall? Well, to be honest, not that much. As I mentioned earlier, Gran Turismo Sport will be fully playable without VR, so that's very nice for fans of Gran Turismo, and I'm sure that game will sell very well. Besides that, you've really got one other exclusive, and that's The Last Guardian. The Last Guardian has been in development for so long now. It was announced back in 2009 as a PlayStation 3 game. It went MIA for a while, and it was re-revealed last year and will finally be releasing on October 25th. The game is being created by Team Ico, they made two of the best PlayStation 2 games ever in Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. So it's obvious to understand why this game is so anticipated. However, the long development time has taken a lot of the luster out of the game, and it's hard to expect this game to be as good as Team Ico's other two games. But hey, even if it's a fraction of the quality, it'll still be pretty good. I just wouldn't expect another masterpiece out of The Last Guardian. And Gran Turismo Sport and The Last Guardian are really the only two big non-VR exclusive games. Sony had originally intended for Horizon Zero Dawn to be their major game for the fall, but unfortunately that was delayed until February of 2017. It's kind of funny because Uncharted 4 was intended to be the major PS4 game for fall last year, and that was delayed too. Obviously, you've still got the big third-party multi-platform games with Final Fantasy 15, Mafia 3, Battlefield 1, and the list goes on and on and on. But those games can be played on multiple platforms. If you have no interest in VR and you're absolutely not buying it, well then you're down to Last Guardian and GT Sport. But Sony is obviously banking on VR to be a home run, which with the right marketing push, it probably will be, and it has the potential to attract a completely different audience to the PS4. So that wraps up this video. What do you think? Will you buy a PS4 this fall with PSVR? If you already have the console, are you excited for what's to come in the next several months? Comment your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching and goodbye.